All right, it's 5 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'll start us off with a motion to approve the September 22nd regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention.
And I'll follow that with a motion to approve the September 22nd non-public meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Okay, the select board will meet on the following dates at 5 p.m. Monday, October 27th, Monday, November 10th, and Monday, November 24th. Town offices will be closed Tuesday, November 11th, in observance of Veterans Day. Citizens wishing to be listed on the select board's agenda should notify town hall before noon the Thursday before the scheduled meeting, and all meetings are held upstairs in town hall and also by Zoom. The Zoom information can be found on the town's website at plymouthnh.gov. All right, town manager's report.
Reevaluation hearing update. The reevaluation hearing started on Thursday, September 25th. As of Friday, October 10th, there have been 108 hearings on 187 parcels, which represents 7% of the total parcels in Plymouth. Follow-up letters to those that were at hearings will be going out on Friday, October 17th. 26-27 budget update. The department heads submitted their budgets to Town Hall on Friday, October 3rd. Ann and I have reviewed the budgets and will be starting meetings this week with department heads. Additionally, department heads now have access to live financial reporting through the new finance software, Municipal Technology Systems. Town mechanic update. I'm happy to report that the town mechanic now has equipment to service all town vehicles, with the exception of fire engines and the tower truck. We have been able to purchase essential town garage equipment to include tire changer, vehicle lift, diagnostic equipment, software, and hydraulic hose crimper. We should experience a significant savings in vehicle maintenance expense over the next year as we continue to evaluate. As of today, the mechanic is servicing the town of Plymouth vehicle fleet. Welfare report for September 2025. During the month of September, Mary Ann had 42 interaction consultations with individuals seeking assistance. The cases, as have been in the past few months, range from adult and elderly services, rent, homelessness, fuel assistance, electricity, and housing, and the cases continue to become more complex. As always, Mary Ann consistently demonstrates a deep understanding of our needs, the needs of our community, and her ability to navigate complex situations exceptionally. Town Clerk's Office. Amy reports the following. Town Clerk's Office update for July, August, and September of 2025. Melinda and Amy have been busy keeping busy with everyday tasks and learning the new laws that came out of the past legislation. Amy and Melinda will be attending a clerk's conference at the end of October on the 29th and 30th. Their office will be closed so they can attend the valuable regional training. In the last 3 months, they've processed 1,800 motor vehicle registrations, 246 vital records, including issuing 22 marriage licenses, and 84 dogs were registered. Skateboard park update. The upgrades to the skateboard park were completed on Friday, September 26. The work was done by Northeast Skate Parks with a grant from the New Hampshire Charitable Trust Foundation that was secured by Mike Courier. A big thank you to the Parks Department for their work on this area. If you haven't had the opportunity to stop by and take a look, it is a very impressive addition. On Saturday, November 1st, from 12 to 6 p.m., there will be a grand opening of the skateboard park. Russell Street drainage construction. The project is moving along as scheduled. Our hope is the project will close out on November 15th with a new road surface and sidewalks in place, with final pavement taking place in the spring of 2026. Plymouth Village water and sewer construction, water main installation construction continues on Reservoir Road and Highland Street. As we receive weekly updates, we will keep residents informed in our weekly newsletter and on the Town of Plymouth Facebook page. Busting myths and misinformation, I have developed a form for review that will allow residents to submit questions, even anonymously, and receive direct factual answers from the town. My hope is this will clear confusion, address rumors, and keep the community grounded in facts. I will be developing a form to be used for review at our October 27th meeting. Additional items, the October town manager's message is available on the town website, as well as the 25-26 Select Board strategic priorities. Three things I'd like to make mention that aren't on my report is, the first is with regards to Ann, with her successful completion of the 24-25 audit. The annual audit is a rigorous and complex process that demands immense dedication, meticulous preparation, and countless hours of work. And your leadership, organizational skills, and unwavering commitment to transparency and financial integrity are absolutely critical in ensuring the audit was completed efficiently and successfully. The positive outcome of this audit reflects not only your deep knowledge of municipal finance, but also high standards of accuracy and accountability upheld by the Finance Department. This work is the foundation of public trust, assuring our residents that the town's finances are managed responsibly and ethically. Thank you for your exceptional service, your tireless effort, and your invaluable contributions to the financial health and stability for the town of Plymouth. We got the first report of the audit back, and it was completely successful on the first report back in draft form. So, nice job, Ann.
I think
Good job,
we've
Ann.
probably all seen recently some towns that are struggling with such things, and the audits or non-audits, so we know how important they are. Thanks, Ann.
Thank you. On another note, as you probably all are aware, we had the pirate party this weekend, and I will tell you that both the police and the fire had to make quick changes because they thought they were going to trick the police and fire departments and hold it on Saturday. I will tell you, Deputy Chief Buffington and Chief Pierce were very quick to respond and act to provide adequate coverage and control of a very small pirate party from years past. So thank you to both of your departments for the dedication and being able to rally your troops to come in on minutes' notice and cover that party without any major situations occurring in the town of Plymouth. So thank you.
Did you have intel, or how did you know?
Yeah, we did hear rumors, obviously. You know, they sent out text messages this year as opposed to social media, so.
Gotcha.
Nicely done. That concludes my report.
Thanks,
That's
Scott.
great. Any questions for Scott? Okay. Quite time for the first hearing, so let's jump to our salt purchase.
You have a purchase order in front of you for a total amount of $79,657 to Morton Salt, the vendor we have used in the past. Steve did reach out and obtain two quotes, one from Eastern Minerals and one from Morton Salt. Eastern Minerals was $85.50 per ton, and Morton's was $83.85. As you will see, this is much more than we had originally budgeted due to inflation and the cost of salt. So out of the 25-26 budget, there was $55,000 allotted for salt purchase. And you can see the purchase order is for $79,657. To supplement that purchase, we will be using funds out of road construction of $24,658 to purchase the salt needed in accordance to what we've used over the last 2 years.
When we're looking at amount purchasing, are we looking at forecast?
950 tons of salt.
Well, are we looking at forecasts as like expectation of what we're expected to receive for snow accumulation?
Right.
Like, are we trying to look forward to
Yes,
what we
Steve
expect the
always
season to be?
He looks at what we've used over the past 5 years,
Okay.
and then we look at what the weather prediction is for the upcoming winter.
It had been pretty steady for a long time, but it seems like with the changes in winters we're starting to have, it's wetter and icier.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll make a motion to purchase 950 tons of road salt for a sum total of $79,657.50 through Morton Salt.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I would like to discuss that there's an environmental fact sheet on best management practices for minimizing salt use on roads. And I think that the town could, I think it's good that we're buying salt. I think it would be okay if we started to look at ways to not use it when it's unnecessary.
We do not use salt on some of the secondary roads.
Yep.
We actually use some pea stone as a mechanism to control traction.
Sure, and I mean, that makes sense on roads that are not paved. You don't want to use salt because it just creates mud anyway, but yeah, I support the motion. we can move on.
Were you referencing some sort of best practices kind
So
of?
yeah, there are best practices that salt does have negative impacts to the environment and our vehicles, as we all know. I'm of the personal opinion we could probably all do a lot better with better tires and less salt and be better off in the long run. But I know that public safety is a big issue for having fairly clear roads is a big issue for public safety.
And sidewalks, too.
But yes, I agree.
Mhm. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? What time we got?
5:12.
I think we can do sand in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So you have two purchase orders in front of you. One is for the main purchase of sand for the winter months. And again, Steve went out to bid. We received two quotes, one from Ambrose with the Plymouth pit right down here on Route 3, as well as Pike Industries in Tilton. Very close in delivered price for 2,000 cubic yards. Plymouth pit with Ambrose came in at $40,000, and Pike Industries in Tilton came in at $40,176. Steve prefers the sand out of the Ambrose pit, which we've been using for the past 2 years. The second purchase order is backup in the event that Ambrose runs out of their sand, is to use Pike Industries as a backup for 1,000 tons only if needed, for a total of $18,600. Both of these come out of the contract service winter account as well as the road maintenance sand and gravel account. So the recommendation would be to Ambrose Brothers Incorporated for $40,000 for 2,000 cubic yards, and as a backup if needed, Pike Industries at 1,000 tons at $18,600.
And why would we need a backup?
Because sometimes the pit runs out of
Sand.
sand, but it's,
The right
what I want to call it.
grade.
Thank you. So we always want to have a backup and be able to purchase from
Do we have to
them.
approve both now, or would we approve the second one as needed?
We typically approve them both now,
And do-
so we have it.
If-
But
we
we
ex-
don't expend out of the second purchase order unless absolutely needed and we can't get the sand from Ambrose.
Right. That's what I was wondering about.
Yep, that was my next question.
And, something that may be a small thing, but I noticed that one is per ton and one is per cubic yard.
Right, and when you calculate it over, it calculates it tons. If you go through there, the 2,000 cubic yards of sand relates to 2,160 tons in their memo here that they included.
It's kind of amazing how much that has increased in the past year.
Yes,
Sand.
as with the salt.
Yeah.
How much did we budget for it compared to last year?
Budget amount, we budgeted the same amount and will fall within that amount that's budgeted in the 25-26 budget.
All right, well,
I was gonna say, just for reference, the salt's up about $2.45 a ton from 80. That's like, it's like 2 or 3%, something like that. And this is up double,
Yes.
almost, or I guess double.
Sand, yeah.
Yeah.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve the purchase order for Ambrose Inc. for sand of 2,000 cubic yards at $31,000, plus the delivery of $9,000 for a total of $40,000. And I will additionally just throw on there the backup source for sand. I'll include the Pike Industries as backup source for 1,000 tons, $10,600 plus $8,000 delivery, equaling $18,600 total.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Extra sign spots. I'm not sure who's supposed to sign that part. Scott, I think. All right, with that, it is 5:17. I will open a public hearing. In accordance with New Hampshire RSA 41:14A, the Plymouth Select Board is holding 2 public hearings for the purpose of taking public comment regarding the proposed acceptance of a cross-access easement from Mid-State Community Development, map 110, lot 46, 36 Main Street. This easement follows conditions set by a 2022 Planning Board site plan approval for this property, further reviewed and approved at the April 2025 Planning Board meeting. The requested cross-access easement has further been reviewed and approved by the Plymouth Conservation Commission at their July 2025 meeting. The purpose of this easement is to give the town an alternative connection from Gould Terrace by creating a connection from Russell Street and Main Street. And Joseph, do you want to introduce this?
No, I don't really have anything beyond what you shared. I think that was an excellent summary of it. Per RSA 41:14A, the process for accepting easements requires 2 hearings within a pretty short window. They have to be between 10 and 14 days apart. And then after that second hearing, the Select Board has between 7 and 14 days to make a vote on acceptance of an easement. So it is, that is the reason why we ended up having to push this back, to the next set of Select Board meetings that can fall within those statutorily defined ranges. So with a public hearing this evening, a public hearing on the 27th, that would allow for a vote on whether to accept the easement on November 10th. So that would be 14 days after hearing number 2. The easement is exactly as you described, a cross-access easement on that upper parking lot, accessed from Gould Terrace. This was a condition of approval that the Planning Board placed upon a site plan review approval for Mid-State in March of 2022. So this would allow that condition, us to move forward with allowing that condition to be resolved. There is the surveyed easement plan, which was prepared by Kevin French, and stamped Mylar was provided with us, was provided to the town, and we did also have the town attorney review and approve the language of the written deed. So the key would be, you know, the select board holding those hearings and then making the decision based on that information.
We didn't have this many issues from cars.
Joseph, just a reminder, what is this for access to? Is it across that upper parking lot?
Yep, that's exactly right. So at the end of Gold Terrace, there is a parking lot with 14 spaces on the, let's call it the easterly portion of that parking lot is an access aisle, a two-way access drive aisle. So the easement would cover, it's a 25-foot wide access easement that covers that drive aisle across that property from end to end. So it would essentially stretch from where the town road, Gold Terrace, ends to the other end of that parking lot parcel, if you will. And this was actually initially something that the planning board had required the applicant to provide back in 2006 as a condition of approval. You know, for whatever reason, the easement was never recorded, finalized, provided to the town. But at that time, the town had vacated the right-of-way for a portion of Gold Terrace and given that to what was at the time the bank property, now the Mid-State property. So part of the consideration at that time when the road was abandoned, or that stretch of road was abandoned, was to have the possibility that the town could at some point create an alternative access by using that kind of shelf of land between Russell Street and Main Street. Topographically, there's a change in elevation that's pretty good between those two roads, and there's a bit of a flatter portion along the sort of midsection between those two, which has been eyed as a potential option for connectivity, with the town owning the former inn site on the other end. So this easement between this and that inn site are 3 privately owned parcels. So of course, whether the town, you know, decided to actually go forward with building or constructing that is something the town would have to determine at some point in the future. But it was the intention of the planning board that in order for this road to be taken offline, the town be provided essentially with the opportunity to, at some point in the future, have alternative connectivity, potentially to parking lots or you know, other sorts of parking facilities, or even a through connection, you know, in that area.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Anything from the board before I open for public comment? All right, I will open this for any public comment as relates to this easement. If you could approach the mic, it would be fantastic. Thank you. And for YouTube purposes, if you could introduce yourself, it's helpful.
I'm Patrice Scott. I live on 8 Russell, and I just want to clarify. I'm sorry, I haven't. This property, is this where the bank used to be, the Community Guarantee Savings Bank, and we're talking about that parking lot up? Okay.
Yes, we are.
I just wanted to comment on something that I've noticed there, and if there's, I'm glad that there's an easement in the works, that especially since I guess the tenant now or owner is somebody that we had a pilot with long ago that then decided to stop paying it. So it's nice that they're going to cooperate and allowing access to that, but I am concerned because of the history that we'll end up plowing and shoveling. And I've noticed, I know the previous owner of that bank, when they put in the stairway, promised that the bank would take care of that and it would not be a burden on the town. That's a lot of steps to shovel and take care of, and that leads to the parking lot. And what I've noticed since the bank has exited and all these nonprofits are in there, you know, a lot of people cut through there and you can't do it in the winter. It's never been shoveled, and that's a big concern safety-wise, especially since the population that goes into that building. And if you're going to have a parking lot now we're going to have, okay, a lot of snow and ice and cars up here, maybe that'll be plowed, but who's going to take care of the steps? And I would just like to say, I think they should take care of the steps. Whoever the tenants are in that building can take turns doing the steps. But that was a promise made to the town when those steps were put in, that that would not become a burden on the town. So I just wanted to remind you of that history.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right, at 5:25, I'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board. We have nothing to vote on tonight because this is a two-part public hearing, correct, Joseph?
Yep, that's correct. So public hearing 1 on the 14th, public hearing 2 on the 27th, and then the select board can make a vote on whether to accept on the 10th of November. So it does have to follow that procedure. Of course, I don't know that there's any reason the board couldn't continue to have discussions during those meetings, but the actual vote.
The vote won't be until the first meeting in November,
correct.
assuming nothing goes weird with the hearings.
Correct.
All right, any questions for Joseph before we let him?
Following up on the public comment, who owns those steps? Like, who, does the town own those steps? Does the private?
They're owned by Midstate.
Okay.
The steps roughly follow the route that Gold Terrace once took when it did go all the way down the hill. The actual owner of the land.
It was very steep.
But the liability doesn't lie with the town in those regards. It lies with the property owner, correct?
That would be my understanding, yes. I am not aware of anything that makes the town liable or obligated to ensure that those steps are open.
My understanding is that based on the use of the facility now, they need to have staff parking in that upper parking lot. So I'm guessing if the staff is parking up there, they will maintain the stairway down to the main facility.
If I recall correctly, I think the maintenance of the steps was addressed in the original site plan for the facility, and when the site plan was modified, it wasn't changed.
So the planning board did discuss this during the review of the application. So the planning board did not place a specific condition on this approval that related to maintenance of the steps, but that would not, if there's some other pre-existing relationship agreement between the town and another party, I can't speak to that. I'm not sure at this point. I would say that the fee simple owner of the steps is Midstate, and as you said, on one of the conditions of approval did relate to requiring that generally that upper parking lot should be for primarily employees of the facility. The intention, I believe, of that condition was to not have as high a volume of traffic coming into the facility through that residential neighborhood as you would get from customer traffic. The customers would generally come in from Main Street, and employees would generally park on that upper facility. So, as you said, there's probably some interest in that, but I can't speak to what may have pre-existed this 2022 site plan approval. There was that 2006 site plan approval, which had a number of conditions, and I'm not sure off the top of my head if any of those address the steps.
All right, thanks, Joseph.
Thank you.
And do you have anything in the signature file that would take 2 minutes?
I do. I have an intent to cut. This is for property on Quincy Road. It's like a 97-acre lot, and about 20 acres is scheduled to be cut. The next one is on Wade Road, 32-acre lot, and 20 acres to be cut.
Did those other ones get into these too?
Yes. The
I believe
POs?
they passed them.
Okay.
Those guys.
I think they already got it.
Okay.
Because I think they're passing this way.
No, they started
No,
at
they
me.
started
Started
here.
with them.
They started at me. That's why I was bringing it up.
Just
Scott, can you have the purchase orders that you have in front of you? We just missed a couple people on this side of
I'm gonna date you.
Oh, my bad, thank you.
For salt and
I
sand.
mean, I'm already taken, you can't date me.
All right. With that, I'll open another public hearing. The 6:30, 5:30. So we're holding a public hearing related to a parking ordinance. Notice is given the Plymouth Select Board is holding a public hearing on proposed amendments and fees to the parking ordinance. And we've got the chief here to speak to this for context.
Yeah, good evening. So this was last updated, I believe, in 2019. And so as we were going through in 2019, most of the fine schedule was updated. So the first change you'll see is actually on page 3, section D number 4, where it now says $100. It did say 65 when they changed the fine schedule in 2019. The end fine schedule was updated to 100, but in the body of the actual ordinance, they missed the number, so it still said 65. So I just wanted to get that updated to have it say 100 to line up with the end fine schedules. The next section is section G. That's just adding the town manager in there, as well as a lot of our discussions with parking, especially with South Main Street and some of the other streets have gone to the town manager, was just adding the town manager in there to designate parking as well. And the final section is on page 6. This is just adding in that it shall be the duty of the police officers, and adding that there's also a parking enforcement officer. Under the definitions, it does give the definition of a police officer, and where we do have a parking enforcement officer, I thought it was relevant to add that into the parking ordinance.
I think the only other change, Nate, was on page 12, just adding social media.
You're correct, yeah, so just to kind of get up to date with current times, at the end, for notification of snow removal, parking bans, we'll also add it to our social media accounts and the town's social media accounts.
Perfect. So no other changes other than those adjustments?
Yeah, no other changes. I mean, it was really preempted by that, finding that one fine schedule that had never been changed on page 3. And then we kind of went through and just added a couple small updates.
I hate to ask at this moment, but is it necessary to define parking enforcement officer, or is that already defined somewhere else?
I guess we could add in a definition. There's not in the definition of the ordinance, but the only definition we had was police officer, and that's who it said would be enforcing it. And since Plymouth has had a parking enforcement, I just thought it was relevant, because under police officer, it says to regulate traffic and make arrests, which parking enforcement can't do.
Okay.
So, but I'm not sure we need a specific definition just for parking enforcement officer.
Do we have a job definition?
Yeah, I mean, we could add in something general. I don't think we have to go too,
I just
In
meant,
depth.
as a traditional job,
yeah.
if it would take care of it, but yeah, I agree.
Any questions from the board for the chief? All right, public comment. Please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Patrice Scott, again, of Russell Street. I thought it would be appropriate to bring this question up because it's in the ordinance. And I wasn't sure, I have no problem with any changes to the ordinance. I think we should jack the fees up for any violations myself, especially for the next ordinance. But I came to ask Scott about what I consider ugly and unfriendly signs that were planted all along Russell Street in the summer. And I had contacted the chief, and he actually, helped me get permits for those things when I expressed my concerns to him. But again, a little history lesson. We've lived here for 32 years, and about 20 years ago, the selectmen decided it was a good idea to strip parking all along Russell Street. And I had to come to, I think it was 5 meetings to explain to them the importance of having public hearings before we do things like this, because as a property owner there and in a house that's been there since 1870, I felt that due process rights were involved in property rights. And, we have an easement from the town and the state from 15 in the middle of the street, 15 feet over and all of that. But there's a history that goes with this in our small town. And I also just felt like when I talked to Scott and I found out why did we do this, and because we are in a revenue a shortfall, because the college isn't paying what it used to on the LSSA, and in my view they should be paying way more than what they have always paid. But also, we could have a moratorium on selling our properties, the few properties we have left, to nonprofits. For years I've been saying, I asked the taxpayer how many actual taxpayers of non-duplicative properties we have in this town, and it was consistently way less than what people think. We have less than 2,000 people paying taxes. Now it's probably about 1,300. I don't know what the latest number is. But what a lot of people don't understand is the more, we're a very benevolent community, but the more we give up in our taxable basis, the burden gets greater on the individual taxpayer. So I think, we have discussed in the past a moratorium on selling to nonprofits. It didn't go anywhere, but I think it's time to get serious about this when we just lost 2 more commercial, Community Guarantee is now in the hands of nonprofits. Northway Bank just sold to nonprofits, and now Rite Aid. So, we're being gobbled up. When I was a selectman, it was a third of the property was off the tax rolls. Now it's over 50, I understand. And that's an impossible burden. It's getting to be increasingly, I don't know who's going to be left to pay taxes in this town. But just as an instance, my kids came home, I had 7 kids, grew up on Russell Street, and we loved it. When they came home, they see these signs and like, Mom, did we move to Boston? What is this? What is this? And I would just say, my husband and I, walking through Fox Park, noticed these new permit parking spaces. And when I asked Scott about those, where did they come from? And it seems like, there's just got to be other ways than selling our public parking. And certainly I feel that we need to have a hearing about it. I felt it was kind of aimed at, commuter kids, these kids that I see parking in front of my house were the kids that, they can't afford to reside at the school. So they come every day and go, and I've never had any problem with them. And I don't think it's really fair to impose, these kids have to pay, or somebody who comes to my house now has to pay to visit for a few hours, when other places in Plymouth don't, nobody has to pay to park in front of their houses. So I didn't understand it. I didn't understand we're not commercial, it is residential, and because it happened before, and there was a little motive behind why it happened before, but if we don't study history, we repeat it. So I would hope that we could, I would just ask if you could reconsider not replanting all those ugly signs when it comes back. Plus, you might want to ask the town council. I don't see any authorization in this ordinance for the system that was planted there. This authorizes meters, and the meters take nickels and dimes as well as quarters for a reason, because of the populace in Plymouth. So now there's a new system. We're expecting grandmothers that come to visit their kids at college to have an iPhone? I don't know. I mean, and who's going to enforce that parking? You know, who's going to be checking to make sure these kids got out of their car and, you know, did everything, logged everything in and put their license in it? I mean, I've seen my kids do this in New York City, you know, like, this is Plymouth, New Hampshire, and I just felt it was very unfriendly and ugly. So I would just ask the selectmen to reconsider, because this is your authority, and I really don't see the authority for planting these signs there in the ordinance.
And you're specifically talking about like the leased lot spaces or the rented, long-term rental
Mobile
spaces?
signs that are along Russell Street now, and just the history behind that.
Those are
Back in-
metered still, though. They're just using an app-based meter
App,
system.
yeah.
Correct, the Park Mobile app. And back when the downtown drainage project was being discussed and public hearings were being held, the parking on Russell Street was included in those public hearings to include parking after the closeout of the EDA grant. And that's when they were placed up there, was after the grant was closed out. We had authorization to put the parking signs up there and create the parking spaces. But like I said, it was all part of the 21-22 discussions of the EDA grant and the public hearings that took place on that at that time. And we just followed through with what was proposed and approved on Russell Street.
Yeah. I would just say I never felt or noticed any notice, public notice that parking was going to be changed in public. It might have happened in the course, in the discussion of a grant, but I would just ask the selectmen to consider that. And then to point out on page 6, when you see under Russell Street, it's H, section H, no parking areas, right? That section was specifically, that was after the last time they took the parking away, and I had to, convince the selectmen that it wasn't the right way to do it, and they put back this parking. So the parking in front of my house and a little past that is actually exempt from the no parking aspect of the ordinance, and that is because of this last 20 years ago interaction. But I would just ask the selectmen to reconsider those signs, because there's really no other. It's across from the public library. It's a place that people have always been able to stop by and park, and it's not a commercial area. So I feel it should, I'm asking you to put it back to how it was and just get rid of those signs. So,
From Highland Street to Pleasant Street on the west side, is that correct, Patrice?
on the west side, right. It's not all the way down, it's specifically
Right.
west side of Russell, from Highland to Pleasant, except for the area from the driveway of 4 Russell. They put back 4 Russell and 8 Russell.
Right, okay.
Okay?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
I think Patrice does bring up a good point about the definition of meters in this ordinance. Because
I don't know if it was ever addressed at the time of signs. I think it was, I think we interpreted it as metered parking was kind of just going to signs now.
right. Yeah, I'm noting that there are things in here that says things like said signal to remain in evidence until expiration, so designation at a time of change of signal or some other mechanical operation shall indicate expiration of parking period.
Yeah,
So
I don't know if we ever
that's all
addressed
kind
it.
of meter based and
It is meter based. I don't know if we
yeah.
ever addressed it. For instance, like the meters don't accept nickels and dimes; they accept quarters.
Quarters, right, exactly.
It's constantly been updated, and I don't think we've ever come back before the board to say let's remove the nickels and dimes because it no longer accepts nickels and dimes. I think it was the intent behind it that the metered would be the signs for Park Mobile, because I know it is a believed to be a city thing, but it's in a lot of towns. This is primarily what towns are using
Yep.
for their parking, so
it has become very common and ubiquitous.
common.
Yeah.
Are there, on Russell, if there are no physical meters, is there do you have to have a phone, or is there a pedestal where you could
You have to call, so you don't have to do the app, but you could call the phone number and do it through that, but there are no meters on
That's
Russell
what,
Street.
so
Yeah.
there's
And
no,
no
there's
meters,
an
no
alternative
kiosk, nothing like that.
compliance
You know,
pathway.
and
Right.
actually, I was talking to the town manager, we actually just got notice that the meter company we've always used is selling and going under. I think meters are kind of going away.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna see in the fairly near future that meters are gonna be non-existent altogether. So I understand we've kept them in Plymouth, we've kept them on Main Street, because I think they're necessary. I think we have a generation that wants to put quarters in the meters. But I think as we move forward, we're gonna see that that's eventually gonna go away, and they're just not gonna have meters anymore.
It's also
Yeah.
a burden for snow removal, right? Something to clear around.
So I would definitely make a request that we make another revision to this to remove or update the language to reference sort of the new technology that we're using.
Yeah,
I agree. I think we could add the
We could do
language
that
of Park
pass.
Mobile specifically, because I don't think we ever addressed it at the time.
Yeah, I don't think we did either.
I would avoid doing Park Mobile specifically, but more of
Any kind
technology-based
of
application.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
metered
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
whether it be coin
To
or,
include or electronic,
Yes.
however we word it.
I haven't seen the specific signage that we're using in that area. What is that? I just haven't been
on
over
a-
there recently.
Green signpost,
Okay.
a typical signpost,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a placard at the top that explains Park Mobile.
And how frequent are those signs?
So they say to do it every 2 spots, because you're gonna park at a spot and say, well, I didn't see the sign.
Yeah.
Which is the first thing we get is there was no signage.
Right.
So as you take a photograph of the parking spot, you need to be able to see a sign that the person parking would see. So it absolutely seems
Mm-hmm. So
like
there's
there
a
are
ton,
signs
just an absolute
down
ton
the
of
road.
them. Okay.
It's because every couple spots, we have to have a sign.
Every other
to know.
spot, yeah.
I wish we could put 4 or 5 signs out and people would know that, hey, there's Park Mobile here, I have to do it, but that's just not the case.
It's not going to be the case in terms of enforcement.
We determine, how did we determine which streets we would include the parking on? Was there,
This one was included in the downtown drainage project
okay,
of
so
doing
that
it.
was the,
There wasn't any other thing that motivated putting those up on Russell Street. But at the time in 21 and 22, they thought it was a good idea to include parking up there. And instead of putting meters, they talked about putting Park Mobile, because we had just gone to Park Mobile in 2020,
That was around, I don't remember the exact.
right around that time frame.
right.
But that was all part of that project.
Okay, but it wasn't some sort of additional rationalization, income-based, students, destination to Main Street, anything along those lines.
Not that I'm
Okay.
aware of. I wasn't part of those initial conversations. I don't know.
I want to check back in on any more public comment, but so think about it, get your courage up. I was actually just gonna make I'll lead Jim into a comment. One of the complaints I've heard from some of the landlords in the area is that there are spots, and Jim may speak to this exact topic, but there are spots where they historically had been able to park that weren't they weren't metered, they weren't issues, and for many years they parked there while working in a property, working at their office, these sorts of things, and now those are metered spots and applies a certain burden to some of the landlords in the area. And I don't know if we've discussed any sort of, and I even think about Patrice's situation where she has somebody who's visiting her residentially, not a normal. Do we offer any sort of pass process or anything that would where we could make exceptions that are logical for that kind of parking?
I don't see why we couldn't. I mean, if Interlake's property says, we would really like 2 spots on Russell Street to park our vehicles in because we own the properties there and we want to do maintenance there, I don't think that's an issue at all. I mean, I speak for myself and Nate, I think.
I think we can hear from Jim first, but.
Yep. Jim Nolan, I live a block away and then I work right there. Nate's already taken care of that. He already gave us pass to park up front. Tough part on me, for me personally on this was not really knowing that any of this was going on, and then the signs showed up, and that's, maybe I did miss a public hearing and all that. I don't feel like there was any input from any of us on Russell Street. We're basically the only business that is there. So it did feel a little bit targeted. I don't want to cry or anything, but I mean, as far as that, it just seemed like that became difficult for us. And when we got a ticket, it was taken care of, but it just seemed a little bit tough for us to swallow because it is just Russell Street that got it. There was no other place that got it, so it seems a little tough, kind of targeting students a little bit, I would say. And then the tough part for us is the summertime is those signs are a giant pain. As far as mowing, we've taken care of that strip for 40 years. When that strip was first created, actually, they moved the sidewalk 3 times since I've been there in the last 28 years. And they create this new strip that has to be maintained, and the town doesn't do it. We do it because we don't want our buildings to look like garbage, you know what I mean? So now you can't just take a mower and run right down this strip. Now you've got 30 signs you've got to dodge in and out of, and then you got to come back and weed whack it. So for us, that's one of the things that's just a little tough to swallow. I met with Nate and the guys I work with as well to talk with him, and as always, a great relationship. And you meet and you get things done, and he did that. He explained his end, what he could do to help us out, and he certainly did that. So certainly commend on that. But just the signs in all, we don't love them. I just wanted to express it. I understand trying to bring in more revenue. As far as a drainage project, I don't know how signs help with drainage, but
Like, it was the road reconstruction. I wish I could tell you that I wasn't there, but as long as you feel you're being accommodated with regards to the permits that you need to be able to park there, we want to make sure that we're working with the businesses. And you are a business, and we need to accommodate what needs you may have.
One thing we had discussed was, that it used to be 2 spots right just past where Patrice was speaking, those first 3 spots, then Pleasant Street. There used to be 2 spots right before that first driveway. I assume it was too close to the corner, so they cut it down to 1 spot, whatever it may have been as far as the changes on that corner. That used to be something that we would use frequently for people come to look at an apartment, sign a lease, and then go, so it would be an in and out kind of thing, not, there all day. Patrice would have some more in front of her place that would park and go to class, but we really didn't have that. Basically, the rest of Russell Street, it would be people going to visit their friends kind of thing, or some people coming to see us to, do whatever business they have to do. So taking those 2 away was a little bit of a hit, and then now to have people have to come and pay when mom and dad come with their kid to look at an apartment or something like that, just, I don't know, it doesn't give a great vibe. So.
I understand, Patrice, your position with regards to Highland Street, to Pleasant Street, and personally, I don't see a problem with not replacing the signs there, as it states in the current ordinance. And then, with regards to Interlake's properties, with those first 2 or 3 spaces that are south of Pleasant Street, be accommodating for you to be able to have those spots?
Yeah, absolutely.
For people to come in and park and view the apartments or whatever the situation is?
And Nate had a great suggestion on that, just make it a 1 hour.
Okay.
1 hour limited parking, so it won't become that person that comes and parks for the day, and which is what
I love that
they
idea.
had addressed initially, I guess, with those Fox parks.
That would allow that to turn over a lot faster for you.
So the goal was to we want to add signs, whether it's 1 hour, 2 hour parking, to allow tours. So if they want to have people come for tours, sign leases, meet with them, show them around, those first few spots can be for that. And then obviously we would notice if people are parking there all day, and I'm sure they'll be the first to call if people are parking there all day. So, and we did give permits, because they drive around to their apartment buildings all day. So, we wanted to be as accommodating as we could. So I think we've kind of found a way to meet in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely.
on some of
That's
those.
nothing but accommodating. That's, and nothing but applause for that. So, again, thank you.
Is there any way we can get data from Park Mobile on how much we're getting for those spots on Russell?
It's only been, when did the signs go up, Nate? Do you?
It's only by zone.
Yeah, they went up during the
Few
summer,
weeks.
so.
You
Okay.
Right
can't get
now-
more.
So there won't be much yet.
Okay.
The best.
But that's
that-
worth it's
that
worth
would
checking
be-
back in on.
Yeah, that's something we should
I think so.
check later, see is it even worth it to have it there? Or,
Right. I still question the justification,
yeah.
why we, income-based potentially, but if there's some other, I can't figure out that other, are students parking there, I don't know, me to blame, is anybody parking there overnight, days at a time, that we're trying to control?
There are people that park there overnight, and the police department is very diligent about issuing tickets. to those.
That
The
was
park there
before the
overnight.
signs, we knew that. I think it's just something we should reconsider.
I think we should
Once
move
again, I'm not sure
forward.
the delineation.
Yeah, I think we move forward with those short-term ideas, and then we check back in and see, are we making
We'll
such
evaluate
a
it.
significant revenue there that it's meaningful? And my guess is we're going to find that it's not. That would be my hypothesis. But I guess
It's not uncommon for residential areas around universities to have time-limited parking. And,
Oh, yeah.
the challenge is it, requires enforcement. I think at one point, a lot of cities were chalking tires and coming back, and, they'd do a 2-hour loop, and if they saw a vehicle with chalk tires, but my understanding is now that
Chalking's illegal.
chalking's now illegal.
We don't really chalk that.
It's now an illegal search, right?
I mean, I think it's important so everybody realizes we have Park Mobile on Merrill Street.
Yeah.
We have Park Mobile the entire length of Langdon Street. So,
But is it the entire length of Merrill?
But the alternative,
Is it up to
the
the
top
stops
university?
where
at
there's
the
parking
university.
available.
Where there's parking available, right?
So it's sort of almost, not exactly, but it's sort of roughly the campus core where we
Right.
have paid parking because we're trying to control that. And this does kind of spill into a residential area, a little outside of where we've historically.
I don't.
It's interesting.
I don't mind creating a relief valve in the Park Mobile network. If they're destinations, as long as they're signed. But the question is, how do you maintain them, or how do you enforce in those timed areas? I question if what the enforcement is on Main Street where there's 30-minute unpaid parking as well. Right. That's always a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, 30-minute is not easy.
Right.
Because you have to go by and essentially take a picture
Every
and
30
come back
minutes.
within 30 minutes to see if they're there. So yeah, 30 minutes a challenge.
Yeah.
So if from the comments that we've received is accommodating the Highland Street to Pleasant Street on the west side, and then the first 3 spots from Pleasant moving south will be moved to 1-hour parking,
Sounds good.
It's fair.
Yeah, I think that's great.
if the board is in agreement with that.
Yeah, any
So
consensus? Feel
I feel that's adequate, and then I feel that we revisit
I agree.
once we have more data on Park Mobile, whether it's justified or not.
yeah.
And
And
we're-
also an update to the policy related to
Yes.
Yeah, I'll get that wording.
map-based.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there on-street parking along Pleasant, or is that no parking through there? Between
There's no parking designated
Yeah, I don't think there's any designated parking on
on
Pleasant Street.
Pleasant Street.
okay.
Yeah, entire
By
Russell
lines.
to the end on.
Not by lines, but also,
There are people that
People
park
do
on
it.
Pleasant Street.
no, that's my point, is,
Absolutely.
there's basically, you can park anywhere during the day, as long as you don't park overnight,
Well,
right?
there's no parking on Pleasant Street. You're
There
not.
are actual no parking signs.
There's
Okay,
no,
that's,
there is
that's
no
what,
parking.
that's what I was wondering. It's signed as no parking?
Right, so a lot of those streets, like I know we fought to get Russell
That's-
Street
that's what I
back
was
to have
getting at.
parking, but Russell Street's narrow. Do you not have parking on Russell Street at all? So there's, it goes in a couple different ways.
I know a couple of those properties on Pleasant put in parking this year.
Right.
Jim, did you have anything else?
That's it. If you didn't need anything else.
Yeah,
from me.
no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chip.
Any other public comments? Could we get a special pass so that we find Jim wherever he parks in town? Is that an option that we could do?
An RFID one.
Yeah. All right. I will close that public hearing at 5:58, and I will open a public hearing on disorderly action policy.
Does that apply to us while we're in this meeting?
It might, yeah. Depends on how loud we get. Amendment to the town's disorderly action ordinance. You want to take us through this one as well, Nate?
Yeah, so the proposed addition is to the Town of Plymouth Disorderly Action Ordinance, and it's intended to address a noise concern that's been brought by some residents, specifically related to the use of the loud engine compression braking, they call it Jake braking, in residential areas. This has been primarily Texas Hill, I believe we had some Beach Hill Road as well. The type of braking system often is used by large diesel trucks. It can create a very large disruptive noise. In the proposed ordinance, it does not prohibit normal, safe vehicle operation. It simply restricts the unnecessary use of these brake systems through residential zones. The ordinance includes clear exceptions, so that's going to be emergency vehicles and any situation where the driver must use engine braking to prevent an accident or ensure safety. And then the violations would follow in line with all of our other disorderly action fine schedule. It's not, this isn't punitive, it's just about maintaining a reasonable balance between the safety, transportation needs, and also a quality of life for the residents on these hills where these trucks have been coming down.
Any questions from the board on this?
Nope, pretty self-explanatory to me.
Public comment?
Could we take a step back? Would it be reasonable to allow trucks to use compression braking during certain hours of the day? Or do you find it to be, would that be problematic as well? Like if, 8 in the morning to 4 p.m. kind of thing? If there are log trucks that are running all day, it's harder on their systems when they can't use their engine compression braking, but, I presume that this is not a regular occurrence, but at the same time, it probably wouldn't be as big of a disturbance during the day.
Well, I think that was some of the issue, is that it was a all-day thing, and so that it was not just distracting. It wasn't a once-a-day thing. This was happening all the time, constantly. And so I think that the fact that it was happening all throughout the day became the issue.
All right. I mean, I don't have the analysis of the complaints that you get.
And very likely, it wouldn't be a problem if somebody did it once because they'd be gone. But if it's occurring again and again, I can definitely see where somebody would want to call and say, hey, can you come and take a look at this?
Which is the case on Beach Hill Road.
Mm-hmm. Is it some sort of like logging truck or dump truck or those sorts of things that are causing that kind of
There's a
problem?
new operation out there that is all heavy equipment coming down Beach Hill Road, and that's creating the problem.
Yeah, okay. I could see that.
All right, public comment.
I just wanted to thank the acting chief here for the pirate. I barely saw a pirate this weekend, so that was good.
So my only concern is that we have a lot of zones in town, and where it says residentially zoned may not be specific enough. I'm wondering if it should be more. Yeah, like should it be specific to say
residential neighborhoods?
Anywhere but the industrial commercial zone.
Yes, I think that's a better.
I think it should be exclusionary, honestly, because I think we allow residential uses in almost all zones, but I'm not sure I would name a lot of the zones where we allow residential to be a residential zone. The ag zone I would not primarily call as a residential zone, and that's where a lot of this
that's
is
where a
gonna
lot of the
happen.
people
Right.
live.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is maybe we can revise this to specifically to prohibit them everywhere except in certain zones.
It is outside the commercial industrial.
Yeah, go at it the other way.
I think that's a good recommendation.
So anywhere outside,
The industrial commercial or even highway commercial, which is north, like the Route 3 north of town.
The ICD, right? ICD zone,
ICD is Tenny Mountain Highway.
and then it would be
And
the highway commercial.
highway commercial, it's fairly flat there, it shouldn't be a big issue, but there aren't that many residences in that area either, it's mostly businesses.
Which one's highway commercial? Is that Route 3?
Route 3 north, from like the Baker to Campton.
Can you say that again, what you want that?
I think it should only apply to the highway commercial and the ICD.
Which is the industrial commercial.
Yeah.
Highway commercial and industrial commercial district. ICD is industrial commercial district.
I can get you those zones specifically.
I agree. I think that that's a better way to come at it because that covers.
I think there are too many holes in allowing it in other zones.
And that residentially zoned, I think it's a little bit too loose.
Okay.
That's a great provision. All right, any other public comments? 6:04. I will close.
We will bring both of those back for the next meeting, not a public hearing
Revisions.
again, just a,
Just an agreement.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything from the public hearing that we didn't directly address in those adjustments, so we won't do another public hearing. We'll just vote and accept the revision.
Gotcha.
That feels fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
November, October 27th
That
or
being
November
said,
10th, whatever
Public
works
is
for you.
always welcome to come and talk to us about anything that's on the agenda.
It's on your agenda.
All right, 6:04, we will open our fourth public hearing of the evening. The Plymouth Selectboard is holding a public hearing in accordance with RSA 3195B for the acceptance of unanticipated funds from FEMA. The funds are being received following a grant application acceptance for staffing of adequate fire and emergency response, the SAFER grant program, in the amount of $787,944.40. These funds will be utilized for the purpose of hiring 4 career firefighters. The offsetting cost to the town of Plymouth will be $106,000 in year one, $106,479.10 in year one, $106,479.10 in year two, $276,845.20 in year three, and $450,000 annually thereafter. This hearing is being held at Town Hall. Gentlemen?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to come up and speak on behalf of this. I want to first congratulate the town of Plymouth and the community as a whole on receiving this grant offer from FEMA. Town of Plymouth has been applying for it for the last 5 years. In that, I want to acknowledge Captain Ben Tebow for his guidance in applying for this grant. I also acknowledge the men and women that have assisted him, and specifically retired Chief Morrison, where he had been the predecessor for applying for this grant. This grant is extremely competitive with, of the thousands of fire department organizations applying. As of this moment, New Hampshire, Plymouth is the only one in New Hampshire that has received it for the 2024 grant. As stated, that the grant has been awarded for a total of $787,944, with Plymouth's share being $489 collectively for the 3 years. This grant is anticipated to allow all shifts to come up to optimal staffing at 4 personnel per shift, which would be tremendous not only for our organization but the community. This, as we talk about operations, we're challenged now. Our operations, we're increasing volume. We've seen a tremendous increase this year alone. Looking at historical data, in Plymouth alone, in 2022, responded to 1,044 emergencies just in the town of Plymouth. As an entire system with the other communities that we serve, in 2022, we responded 1,715 calls. Of those 1,715 calls, we responded to 329 multiple calls. That means that multiple calls were happening at once, with 44 not answered at all. We had to call in mutual aid. Just in Plymouth alone, we've gone up from 2022 to 2024 up to 1,145 calls. This year alone, we're expected to breach 1,250 just in the town of Plymouth. As a system as a whole, we're expected to breach 2,000 calls for service, emergency responses. As we know, the fire department, we're a team sport. We can't do anything independently. If we reference the police department, whether they respond with a cruiser, with one officer, we can't. We don't have that luxury. Firefighting takes multiple people, and in EMS, it takes multiple EMTs per call, and that's under state statute for requirements to operate an ambulance. 2024, it's important to note that we responded to 1,825 calls. Of that, we had 423 multiple calls at once. That is a humongous jump. That's a tremendous jump. It's over 100 multiple calls instantly. What's kind of neat since we started adding 3 to shift 3 years ago, we had a 16-minute average response time to get an ambulance, second ambulance, or truck out the door on multiple calls. That's since, from adding those, it's dropped down to 10, but it's still not meeting the optimal need. We're not unable to operate 2 ambulances simultaneously. We're unable to send an ambulance and an engine to a motor vehicle accident. More importantly, we're unable to respond to a building fire at the required staff, and NFPA 1720 and 1710 requires 4 firefighters on an engine for building fire. That allows us to get water on a fire and effect a rescue immediately. So that's very important. That's our safety guidelines, and that's where our liability as fire chiefs and community fathers and mothers are held to in the event that, you know, we're brought to court. One interesting thing I really want to point out, and I don't know if it's been acknowledged before, but we operate a $1.56 million EMS budget along with a $500,000 fire department budget. So focusing on EMS alone, our $1.56 million, we collect over $800,000 in revenues annually. So our true budget to the town of Plymouth alone is only $740,000 in EMS. That's a tremendous number, and that's all because of the men and women in this organization and the job they do. I'm very proud of them. We answer a lot of EMS calls, and in return we get the opportunity to generate a lot of revenue for the town of Plymouth. This will allow us to increase our revenue and, more importantly, our response guidelines and responsibilities to the community. Our service is not getting any less. We're getting called on more and more, and whether that be, yes, we have more construction going on in Plymouth, but we also have a lot going on in Plymouth. We hear the hot topic nonprofits are gobbling up the town. Yes, they are, but they're bringing in medical services and all these. In return, they're calling 911 more and more, not just for police, but fire and EMS. Our EMS services running tremendously through town in all aspects. Doesn't matter if they pay taxes or not, we're being called, and we're required by law to answer. We're seeing an increase in our communities that we're serving around us. There's also a fail in their system where they're not having as many volunteers. Of these 2,000, Plymouth is no different. Of these 2,000 calls that we're running, 1,800 calls we're running, our call company is not able to produce the response that we need of them. Collectively, for 2024, they were only responsible for 2.3% of the responses for 911. That's a very minimal number when we're calling on them multiple times. I mean, you saw that 423 multiple calls, and they respond to less than, I would say, 50 of those. This is why we need more additional staff, and this grant allows us to meet this much needed help. Looking at the historical data, 1,310 in 2023, 2024, 1,464 EMS calls alone, with only 391 fire. EMS really is the bread and butter and where we're needed in this community. And then we sit there and we struggle with the financial aspects, but we're also trying to meet the community's guidelines, but also the select board's strategic plan. And looking at a strategic plan, we talk about retention of employees. That was actually labeled as number 4 in your strategic plan. And how do we retain our employees? Pay and benefits. We've changed the work environment. It's no secret the board has been tremendously successful and also supportive of our fire department, and we thank you for that. We've got the pay and benefits. We're working on that. We're making it better for our employees. We've changed our work environment. We've had a wonderful turnover in our department, but we're still, most importantly, number 3 is how do we train them as prevent burnout. We're burning out our employees because they're running ragged. It's the three personnel per shift, and it's the off-duty career personnel that are coming in basically because they feel responsible to help the town. In that, we talk about preventing burnout. There's a thing that we have that's called calls per firefighter. This is a great statistic, and actually, Select Board member Moniski's report. Do you remember that report you did on all those services? Yep. In 2023, I believe it was? He had some great data that actually led us right into this rabbit hole. And let's compare us to Littleton, a northern town. It's not as southern. They very much operate as a community like Plymouth. They're running 1,800 calls for service in 2024. They have 16 firefighters per shift, and they're running on average of 112 calls per firefighter. That's a great statistic. Now we compare that with Belmont and Guilford, who are very much similar size in communities as us, and they're average right around 113 calls for firefighters with 16 firefighters on shift. Now, compared to Plymouth, 1,825 calls in 2024. We had 11 firefighters collectively on shift, and they were averaging 165 calls per firefighter. That's where our burnout increases. We've lost 6 employees in the 5 years because they were burned out. The call volume was too much for them, and they just needed to change jobs. Some left the service altogether. Excuse me. 2026, we know just from the data, historical data, anticipating we're going to be over 2,000 calls annually for service. If we had 16 firefighters on shift, it would bring us down to 125 calls per firefighter. That is a tremendous drop from that 165, and it will prevent burnout and allows us for rotation and many other things. So, utilizing all this, we asked for the community and we asked for the board to support this grant and allow us to accept it. Now, we know that this isn't just a one-time venture. We know that's going to be required in 3 years, and we know that we're going to have to raise and appropriate in March. But if we have to accept this grant by the end of this month, or we lose it. We lose the opportunity. So that's kind of my recommendation to the board with the historic data that proves that this is a much-needed asset for our department and the men and women of our organization.
And Kevin, is it true, I know you checked with FEMA in our conversations that we've had on this, that if the board accepts it tonight, it can go on as a warrant article at the March town meeting for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, what the financial responsibility of the town will be, and the town's voters could vote on that warrant article?
Yeah, right before the government closed, I talked to Grant Support Services. They have an actual office just for the SAFER grant, and the gentleman advised me that I told him our predicament, and he says, well, that's every small town in northern United States. Apparently, it's just us that does March town meetings. And they said yes, that we can approve it and accept it, which was his recommendation. And if we want to put this in front of the town for March, go ahead. We would have until the 16th, which would be our first audit, which is ironically 3 days after town meeting, to start filling these shifts. So we know we have that window. So if the board was supported tonight, I would prepare and anticipate that we'll start preparing employees to come in, but we wouldn't be able to until approved in March by the community. Does that help? Is that talking too much?
Yeah.
If I understand that correctly, we would put a warrant we put an article on the warrant, and if the town voted it on the 16th, you would have people start, or we would
start looking to fill it on the 16th.
Okay,
right
so you
away.
wouldn't start the search until the 16th.
So,
You know,
go ahead, Deputy.
So we could start these positions if funded through town meeting in March. We could start posting and recruiting for a July 1 position.
July 1, okay. That was what I was going to ask for, what kind of target
So
start
the
date.
only caveat to that is if the positions are not filled on March 16th, and we have that void from March 16th to July 1st, we lose that quarter's worth of funds. It doesn't get piggybacked on to the other end of the grant. So, which
Yeah.
we are more than okay with, knowing what the future looks like. That's an easy pill for us to swallow. So we could get the town to, you know, presuming the town approves the funds at the March town meeting, we could fill the positions for July 1 and just roll everything into the new budget July 1.
Can I ask a question about some of the statistics?
Yeah.
So you mentioned the calls per firefighter for Littleton,
Belmont, Guilford.
Guilford. Is their ratio of EMS to fire responses about the same?
Yeah, they're all running about 80%
Three to one.
EMS.
Okay.
So, you know, Franklin, for example, does 2,208 calls for firefight, 2,208 calls annually, and they're running about 14. So they actually produced an article September 23rd of this year. In this article in the Concord Monitor, they named out that in the whole entire Lakes region to northern New Hampshire, that they are next to Plymouth with the highest call ratio per firefighter. So they did.
But they cited us as
being the
high with
highest.
them.
We're the highest in the North Country.
Right.
So north of Franklin. I wouldn't say North Country, but we're pretty south.
North adjacent.
Yeah.
We're south of the north.
Yeah. So there is, as far as north of us, it's Littleton's only one, and they're just as busy as us, and they have more staffing to meet that demand because they're serving several communities as well, like we are.
Or those other towns you said with 125, 122, 123 call rate, what's their employee retention / burnout? Are they going through?
So they're finding the same as we predicted, that they're losing less employees regularly because, Guilford I'm intimate with, I know them well, we talk regularly. Littleton, we talk regularly. It's the same thing. The more firefighters, it's the more share of the workload.
Okay.
So
One thing that's important is how we changed the invoicing for our contracted towns that we bill per call. We don't just accept the collection from the commercial insurance, private paid, Medicaid, is that money truly goes back to the town, the contracted town, but we're collecting the true cost of what it costs Plymouth Fire Rescue to run the ambulance. So any of these increased costs, the $106,000, an increase of 2% on the budget, whatever those are all factored into the budget so that the town of Ashland, the town of Holderness, the town of Bridgewater, the town of Warren, Wentworth, Dorchester, their fees are all going to go up next year based on what our actual costs are. So what we do is break that down by percentage of each contracted town. And we know that, for example, Plymouth holds 52% of the EMS calls, give or take. We know what that cost us, but we get to collect that revenue back from the commercial pay, private pay. Whereas if Holderness holds 10% of the call volume, that's how their billing is broken out. So right now we charge $1,373 to roll an ambulance out of that fire station to a contracted town. It's going to increase based on the increased costs that we have. That is not fair to the Plymouth taxpayer to fund those additional costs. It needs to be broken out equally based on the percentage of runs to each one of those communities. So we're not losing money any longer.
Is there any risk, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it publicly anyway. Is there any risk to that increase in cost to the surrounding communities, leading those surrounding communities to say they're not going to use our service anymore?
I can tell you that we've had that conversation, and for any one of those contracted communities to start up an ambulance is over $1 million. This is a much cheaper option for them with the dedicated professional service level that they get with paramedics, EMTAs, basic EMTs, is that we are sending a very well-qualified team to address that medical emergency of what it might be in that community. And we've had those conversations with those towns over the last 2 years, and they're still with us because if I'm the town of Holderness, for example, and it's going to cost me $1 million to start up an ambulance service, hiring full-time staff 24/7, and I can pay $249,000 a year and get $58,000 back in revenue that comes from insurance companies, it's a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not cost-effective for any of our contracted towns to try to start up
No, it's better for them to continue.
with us.
And I mean, not to mention the cost of an ambulance and supplying that, the piece of equipment. Is there in this conversation, or maybe it's a bigger, broader conversation, is there an opportunity for us to talk about regionalized fire service in addition to EMS?
We are currently doing that. Kevin has been diligent. We're working with 8 communities with regards to regionalized ambulance service. And we should be holding a meeting sometime either later in October or November to bring all these communities together. Individually, they've all committed to this regionalized service, which could cost around $800,000 or $900,000. It would be absolutely zero cost to the town of Plymouth. It would all be funded by these 8 communities that we have been speaking with. So will we have $800,000 or $900,000 in our budget? Yes, but fully offset by revenues coming in from those communities. So we have started that discussion.
But that discussion would probably be you know, because that brings more call volume, right? So that's the balance too. You start to regionalize, you increase your call volume. Now 4 firefighters a shift doesn't work, but if we've got the funding, you add
So,
those additional firefighters.
For transparency, we're primarily focused on EMS because that's the need right now. I mean, as you've heard, Warren Wentworth collapsed. That created intense strain on the Plymouth Fire Department. We stepped up to help them because we want to be good neighbors. This regionalization plan right now is focused on to the west for stabilizing EMS out there. We've offered our assets and resources, but they're going to fully fund it. If they choose to move forward, they will. If not, then we're going to back off and we're going to move on with just taking care of what we're doing now. The fire side, we have reached out to several communities to start the conversation. We're in full transparency. We're still getting a lot of resistance on the fire side because it's traditional New England. It's really coming down to just educating them and let them see the bigger picture and the cost savings for all the communities involved, including Plymouth.
Yeah.
That's going to
I'm
take
sure
a
you'll
little
get
bit.
resistance right up until they have to buy a new fire truck.
Yeah. Some towns like Holderness, they don't care. They'll spend $1 million. But other towns, they've realized that it's costly, and they're not sure if they can continue to. We
Seems like
have
Rumney is one of those towns that feels like it might be kind of
Rumney's teeter, and they're
interesting model relationship.
we have a great work relationship. It's actually been the best it's ever been with Rumney, and the board members and us, we talk. The fire chief and I have a great relationship. We see that the future's coming, that regionalization, there's no ifs, buts. I proposed it to them. We're working on it. It's delicate right now. We're still in the very infant stages of it. But the EMS system, that's the immediate need. So we've shifted our focus on that to make that. Really, it's to take the burden off Plymouth Fire Rescue and the taxpayers. And if we can get them up and running, then when the opportunity comes, we could easily flip that coin and switch it to fire as well. But it's come down to simply we need to do the legwork. We need to show them a system that works, and they can see the bigger picture then once they see it and working. And then at that point, it's just simply moving forward with the next venture, which would be the fire side of it. But in the meantime, we're dealing with this, and it's busy. It's getting busy.
Any concern on the timing with this proposal, while also trying to put a proposal in front of the town around a facility?
Yeah, there's a lot of concern about it. It's time and opportunity. In our case, we got the opportunity. Deputy Doucette has worked with our political figures, and our personnel have got this grant, and we got awarded it. So this is the issue we have in front of us. Scott, if you got anything to add?
I think, like the conversations I have with department heads and the conversation I've had with Kevin is, what are your priorities? Where are our priorities in the fire department right now? And in my eyes, in viewing what we have, my first priority is the Plymouth Professional Firefighters Union contract. That's my first priority. My second priority, and I think Kevin will agree with me on this, is the SAFER grant. And the third priority is the land for a new building. Because I think in where we are, in the current environment that we are situated, we will never, ever get this opportunity again. Ever. We decline it, we're done. And to be the only department in New Hampshire that was selected for this grant says something about how the grant was written and based on the needs of the community. And I think for retention purposes and mental health reasons is we really need to take care of our staff, number one, the SAFER grant is number two, and the land for the building, although we absolutely need it, but we know we have constraints on what we can afford, is number three.
Well, if we're looking at regionalization, I think that makes the grant, not the grant, the building even more critical as if we were looking at
agree.
a regional.
I think if we can put together an agreement to support the regionalization, I think that only supports the investment in the facility.
Yeah.
But it has to come with the financial support of surrounding towns to make that work.
This is not something that'll happen overnight, I can promise you. I've been working on it. It's been my full-time night job. That's actually the joke right now. I've been meeting with every community to the west, and I mean everyone, right up till I've been meeting with county commissioners to get this moving, because it's a critical need right now, because we fight geography out there. It's 45, 50 minutes to send an ambulance out to Warren.
It's rural.
That's bad. And life's like, but we're the only agency, we're the closest agency.
I think the other important piece of this is in our conversations, and Kevin is being very mild about his engagement with this, but the work he's done with Rumney. Maybe some of you know, maybe not everybody knows, that Rumney owns the old rest area out on Route 25 and have offered that up for an EMS station. So based on the numbers that are being put together, it would renovate that, and we would have a regionalized EMS station out there that was oversight by Plymouth Fire Rescue, would add additional 2 ambulances to the fleet, which would support Plymouth in its endeavors for everything to the west, and our station right here can take everything to the east. So there's a lot of benefits from it. So we would have an additional EMS station at no cost to the town of Plymouth.
But it really boils down to retention of our current employees, and I want to remind the board that, like, we have an amazing crew, and I speak to the public all the time about that. I can't speak highly enough of our men and women that work for us. Especially our career people, they kill themselves daily for us, just to meet the needs of the community. And besides their contract, this is the optimal retention tool right here, is in preventing this burnout and sharing the workload and really saving their physical and mental health, is adding a 4th position. This will allow us to meet the community's needs. They can get reprieve, do rotations, and more importantly, it can allow us to operate simultaneously. And that need's only growing. It's growing more and more tremendous every day. Plymouth's a hub. Unfortunately, we don't get the taxation, but we get all the business.
So this really doesn't go towards regionalization, right?
This right here is
really is just
This is just about maintenance.
I don't want to confuse the two, and especially to a voter.
We're still, even bringing our shifts up to 3 per shift, we're still 15 years behind in current trends with staffing. This will bring us pretty close to current trends. Now, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's saying the numbers say we should go up to 5, but 4 would allow us to operate at a whole new level. And I could tell you, no one's going to see the greater operating levels than the folks calling 911. They're going to be the immediate ones that are feeling that effect.
I support this. I'm curious if any of our discussions about regionalization, I mean, would those agreements involve kind of a base level of financial support to offset
the entire cost of the regionalization?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's what's needed. Like when I think about this scale of regionalization, it's unfair for Plymouth taxpayers to burden, the overhead costs of keeping people in the station. But at the same time, when I think about other areas outside of New Hampshire, like almost every town, almost every place I've ever lived, you've had, like, you might have a local fire department, but you've had a county sheriff or a county
response.
Yeah, a county EMS system. So trying to, it works on that scale, and like we're not going to replicate that here, but like, having those service agreements with surrounding communities would get us closer to that. And I think it's, I've talked to other people. Education is one of those places where regionalization makes a lot of sense too. But
I am a tremendous believer in it, and that's my goal as fire chief, is to bring that to this region.
Yeah. Good.
Question.
Do we do mutual aid EMS as well?
We call in mutual aid and we give mutual aid. So
yeah, I meant the giving side more than the call in.
Like, for example, we send an ambulance up to Campton all the time. We don't bill them for it,
right?
Because it's part of the whole being part of Lake Street Mutual Fire Aid.
Absolutely.
And they give us an ambulance a lot. In fact, of these 42 no answered calls last year, probably 42 of them was them, if not close to 42.
So to some extent, the regionalization plus the expansion of staff means that some of those calls that are, mutual aid to there now are just our call. So it doesn't, you don't actually get potentially the full load expansion. You actually
Share the
constrain
work.
it. Yeah, you share the work a little.
And the key is we have to start off with something to show the communities that it works.
Yeah.
Because no one believes it, and it really comes down to traditional New England, and that's what we're fighting right now. And we're making a lot of headway to the west. I can promise you that if we get the system up and running and we show to all of our community partners, including the towns surrounding us, that it works, they'll jump on board with it, and we can create a better, robust system.
Well, and they'll see this is what this community is paying, and this is the service they're getting, and then they can compare that against the service they're paying for and funding themselves, and it won't be a theoretical thing. It'll be real if we can get it going with a few more communities.
Exactly.
I think your approach there is spot on. Focus on one or two to try to break those walls down and
Get the proof of concept going. and
yeah,
then-
absolutely.
That's
I
it.
love your thinking there, Kevin.
I think, overall, this is something we don't want to let pass by,
No.
and that the board should accept it, and we create a warrant article for the March town meeting to get approval from the taxpayers.
I would be much more nervous about this if we didn't have that component where we could take this to the taxpayers and say,
Oh, absolutely.
"Is this
Yeah.
right?"
Absolutely.
I would be much more concerned. but-
Question, is there opportunity for reapplication of this grant after the three years? I mean, I know we got really lucky that we got this accepted this time. Do they have reapplications of grants?
5 years. Correct, 5 years?
I believe so.
I think you have to
5
sit out
years.
5 years before
You
you
have to
can
sit out
apply
5
for
years
the
before you
same
can
credit.
reapply. One thing, and it's tricky. This grant, right up till President Trump took office, was 100% for 3 years. He froze FEMA. They did their rethink the government, whatever they did to save money. And they changed this. When we applied for it, it was 100%, and they dropped it down to 75 for 2 years and then 35 for third year. It is what it is. It's still a tremendous savings for our community.
Yeah, it still offsets a lot from getting us back up to what should be critical staffing, so.
Yeah.
We're still in a public hearing. Any public comments? I'm staring you down, Frank. I figured you had something to say.
I was gonna say, but
You can stay seated.
20 years ago, I was working on a program to help our fire department's facilities, and looking at our demand because of our location, the town within the state. And I went down to FEMA headquarters and looked at the map of New Hampshire and your resources system. And one thing that is really stood out to me was there's nothing in the center for a catastrophic disaster. So I was looking at the Center of New Hampshire Emergency Response Resource Center. That's why I started my heliport, looking at air assets, and then looking at other things the town could do to work to get newer facilities and facilities that were properly located by demand and use. Also equipment. And so as a member of the National Fire Protection Association's Codes and Standards, I did a lot of work with airports. And the town of Plymouth is the only town in the state of New Hampshire that has all 7 modes of transportation infrastructure within its bounds. The only other cities that have all 7 is Concord, Manchester, and Portsmouth. We're not allowing ourselves the joy of return on investment for having that natural event of transportation, but that is one of the reasons why we have major demand on our services, because the way the roads happen to have been laid out back in 1780, and the way the rivers are, the railroads, and so on, airports, air systems, we have the capability of enhancing our system with the location that we have, what we really need to do is to first get the visual aids of what is being recommended here so the taxpayers can see what we're saying on how the system works. And then also the folks in Concord and Washington, but Concord in particular, this is a potential resource for the center of the state for emergency response. And that's the kind of system that I think we need to work at. And that's one of the things I was working at is on the Economic Development Committee. But, you know, the biggest thing for the people, the taxpayers, is getting a visual aid understanding of the system and why it's beneficial to them, to us, the citizens, to support this work that's being done by our fire department. And how can the citizens support the action that allows this to go forward and we can see an accomplishment of it.
Thanks, Frank. Any public comments? Anybody on Zoom? I don't see any participants there. With that, I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion to accept the funds, the unanticipated funds, in the amount of $787,944.60 from FEMA in the form of the Safer Grant Program.
Second.
Any discussion? Do we need to note anything about putting it on the warrant as part of that motion?
Please.
I think that would be.
And I'll amend my motion to include putting it on the warrant coming March, for March.
For approval. So we'll officially accept the grant, and then we'll get the town to approve the actual implementation.
Expenditures. Yep. And I approve the amendment as the seconder.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you to the board.
Yeah, great work. And please,
Support.
please commend all your members who worked
Yep.
tirelessly on this. It is a big deal.
It is. Thank you. I will.
We're very lucky to have you all. Thank you.
All right, that ends our marathon of
Public hearings.
And we did not get out by 6:10, so
Man is not happy.
blame
I talk a lot.
definitely Kevin's fault. That takes us to the PSU Service and Support Agreement.
And we are working on the language of that because it had to be all reworded because of the new title of it.
Okay.
So I will have that for you on the 27th.
Okay. 27th. That takes us to Frank Miller regarding historic sign.
Speaking about the hub of New Hampshire, the sign, almost 100 years old. This one's a brand new one, a replica of the sign that was located at Route 25 C or B from Center Harbor to Route 3 intersection. The original sign was cast iron, very heavy. It had an arrow pointing to the right and 15 miles to Plymouth. But I was very taken to having this located here in Plymouth. And this was replicated by folks at Mega Print. And my suggestion is I want to talk to the Historical Society because this sign would fit, bolt up right to their sign. It's right outside the sidewalk here. One side just says the Historical Society, and this would be on the other side. It's plastic, there's plastic. And I think this says a lot about Plymouth. And so I'm, like I say, donating this and see if folks in town
I
of
love
Plymouth
it.
would appreciate
It's
it.
beautiful.
Nice.
Great. Yeah, it's beautiful. What happened to the cast iron version?
Scott Biederman has it.
Okay.
Oh, really?
People to pick it up.
But it does.
It is, seriously, I don't know
I
how
was
they-
envisioning stamped steel when you said that, but no, cast iron would be heavy.
Uh-huh.
very
Is there
heavy.
maybe another place that more people could see it?
I
don't know if-
I was looking around, and of course I saw the historical thing, and I got my tape measure out, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's bolt right up to it.
Right. Where is
Same.
the historical sign? Is it
It's
in
right
front
out
of the
here on the
building?
sidewalk.
Right on
Yeah,
the side here.
how many people?
I feel like that should go somewhere in like the town common or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I had
it's
thought
awesome.
about
Yeah.
somewhere in the town common,
Yeah.
maybe next to the Boy Scouts, so when people take a picture of it, they include this, but, you know, I'm giving it to the town, and if there's a sign placement committee,
We'll make one.
we can, wherever it
Dan's gonna head
goes,
it up.
I would support any action at all, and whatever I can, I didn't get the 4x4 because I didn't know what the final location
sure.
would be.
Yeah.
And I give ourselves the opportunity that, I noticed our Welcome to Plymouth signs have 2 posts rather than a single
Right.
post, which looks very nice. But I can get the hardware to whatever the committee decides. So,
I've always wanted one at the Rotary. I'm assuming from a visual perspective, you know, cars driving through, not being able to see, but I've always wanted something. there.
Honestly, you
Like
could
as you
you
come
could
in from
mount
93.
it. You could mount it low on.
I would
on
love
the,
to personally,
on
but
the rotary. I would
the
think.
feasibility.
Would we need DOT approval to put a
You would.
sign in the rotary?
You would.
well,
You
the
have
only
that
thing I
little
wonder
island
about
out there.
this Rotary
Side
was that
island?
it would be a distraction
Side island.
driving, and I'd rather have a sign that said, "Welcome to Plymouth, please be nice."
You can put it sticky right down there. Addendum.
That's the first sign. I'm surprised. I tried to get a sign on the one Bridge Street there that said, "Welcome to Plymouth." We don't have any sign coming across from 175
Right,
to Plymouth, and you have to guess what town you're in,
right.
which is, I've been on that, and
Do you want to talk to Louise McCormick from the Historical Society?
I wanted to,
And
yeah.
then circle back to figure
Yeah, I
out.
mean, the first idea you suggested, I think, is fine, but I think Mary Ann's point of if there's another higher visibility location
Yeah.
for it, it's beautiful.
really
I would
nice.
love people to to see
Right.
it, and
Right.
you know, if there's another option, I'm supportive
Well,
of
it's-
pretty much
I
anything.
love
Yeah.
the concept of putting it in the traffic circle as you approach from Holderness.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
It could,
possible.
If we could, I mean, DOT's gonna be in town next Monday to get yelled at by everybody in town.
Yeah,
Maybe
could maybe we get them to
can
give us
benefit
something?
there.
yeah.
Different division.
Oh, okay.
What's that?
Different division.
It's not my job.
This would be the right-of-way division.
No, I know.
But,
So, yeah, I just I just happened to notice this historic sign, and I got the tape measure out, and I said, oh my gosh, this would be same dimensions and bolt it right in, but I do like your idea of another,
It almost feels like maybe bringing Parks in or somebody like that to try to help us figure out the right location. And
right
maybe it
place
is
for
the
it.
Historical Society, but
at least Parks could install it.
yeah.
I commend you, Frank, for thinking of the town and
Yeah,
making the
always.
effort to get it produced.
well, that's part of my United States of Plymouth, because there are 33 Plymouths in the United States. And I have it on a map in my office, laminated map, and I have all the on Wikipedia, got all the bios to them, and you would be amazed. And a lot of people don't even know how we got our name to our town, but it started in 1211 in England, a little town that was situated at the mouth of the River Plym, E-L-Y-M. It was also the first town in England to be designated as a town in 100 with King Henry VI, chartered the town. But looking at the towns in New Hampshire, United States, 1620 is Massachusetts, and the last one chartered was California in 1917. And we're not number 2 or number 4, because Pennsylvania had a Plymouth in 1685 and 1686 or 1763, and then they built another Plymouth in 1769. So, but what's really fascinating is patterns of migration on how the Plymouths went out to the West Coast, but it's the patterns of connections. And I've had people from Maine, Connecticut, Vermont up in my office, and just unbelievable when you find out this person went to school with you and you didn't even know that they were from the Plymouth, the businesses connection. So I think I was hoping to get this in the schools so that kids could appreciate their Plymouth. And one thing I have noticed, I've gotten a lot of Chamber of Commerce magazines from other Plymouths, and they have some main streets, they have churches, schools, and oddly enough, the ones that say Plymouth High School, Plymouth Grade School, they do not say the state. So I would like to go and take a picture of all of them, put them in one photo and ask a kid, okay, which one's yours? Are you paying attention? Because we don't have a New Hampshire on ours either. So, but there's so much that is hidden in plain sight, and so I'm just trying to get something going here. And anyway, if this is something that the committee can do, I'll definitely be working with you to make sure that whatever monies are needed for placement, I will be there. And
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Frank. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
all right, so
You want us to
Do you wanna
hold the
say- do you
sign
wanna
for
s-
now, or do you
I
want to
can-
take it with you?
I'll
I agree.
well,
And we can circle back with you.
yeah, I'll keep it.
Perfect.
I'll keep it in my truck. And,
Okay.
and maybe I can just mount it on the top and drive
Ah, there you go. I like that.
But we
Right on
will,
the side.
Mount it sideways so that you get aerodynamics.
Oh, yeah.
we will circle back with you.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yeah. We'll stay in contact and see what we can do.
Thank you very
Excited to see it
much.
up.
Frank.
Thank you,
I love
Frank.
it, Frank.
So
And
cool.
wonderful to see you.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
Anything else from the signature file?
Nope.
Already cleared that one, so let's plow through some committee reports.
I have nothing from Sewer and Water as their meeting was today. So, and I was unable to make it, so.
Perfect. Planning board?
Oh, boy. I had notes. Planning board did meet. I had notes. I had them at home. Let me scroll real quickly. All right, I'm gonna have to go wing it. Come back to me on that one, please.
Okay. Ted, school districts?
Schools, okay. Plymouth Elementary School was first up. They met last week on Monday. They had a report out from the principal that says that they have an enrollment of 394 students, including 48 kindergartners and 17 preschoolers. They did talk about all the various class sizes, which is far more detailed than we probably need. They talked about some of the events that they had going on. They had a literacy team event for a noted Dr. Carol Tolman, who came in, and she's apparently an expert in the science of reading. They had some collaborations with Wentworth and Russell School elementary school programs, and They also talked about a Sanborn Strong celebration that they had with themed t-shirts. Noting the facilities update, playground repairs they had for about $4,500, and some gym repairs to the space station, which is apparently a thing that's mounted way up there, and that was $2,850. Noted athletics, they have 183 students in grades 5 through 8, with 110 of them participating in fall sports. They had some recent trips to Geneva Point, Franconia Notch, and Nature's Playground over in Maine. These are part of their regular beginning of school type events. There was a discussion on lunch debt, where they were preparing basically the board for the fact that it may be higher, they may have to do something about it, potentially taking some of the excessively expensive ones that let's say a family doesn't have like $800 of lunch debt. They may have to take them to something like small claims, or get a little bit more aggressive on pursuing those folks to pay their bills. Additionally, they talked about the fact that one of the bigger challenges they had, and this was at both schools, so is getting folks who got used to not having to fill out the forms to get free and reduced lunch to fill them out. Ultimately, when they do and they get those free and reduced lunches because of economic reasons, it ultimately helps the schools in other ways because now they qualify for more grant opportunities, etc. So that is the big events from the elementary school. We'll move on to the high school. On the first privilege of the floor, Martha Burtis, Plymouth resident, raised some concerns about healthcare costs affecting school districts statewide, and this is largely for school districts that are not on the same health insurance program that Plymouth is, and they're where they're seeing uncontrolled costs suddenly becoming allocated to the school district. But in our case, those costs are all pre-prescribed at a known rate that we currently have, and so we're not being subject to these sudden, I'll call it balloon payment type scenarios. In the principal's report, they talked about homecoming and how that was very successful. And the girls' varsity soccer team won their home game for the first time in several seasons. Open house, parent-teacher conferences, they had a combined format this year where they had part of that time being open house, and then the other part where they had the the parents sign up with the teachers to talk. I don't know the exact details of that, but I do know that the basically the culinary school store and whatever, they had kind of open opportunities for people to come in and see their stuff. Teacher and Service Day is happening, and I don't know exactly when, but one of the big changes this year is the new tool that they have for managing grades doesn't do the GPA weighting the same way as it's been done in the past. Essentially, and I don't know the formula, but the new GPA is 4.0 standard, 4.5 for honors, and 5 for AP. And there was some kind of methodology that they've used in the past where they would do a multiplier of some sort for figuring out the GPA. and class rank as a result. Let's see. Upcoming events, the Anne Frank play. The PSAT is happening with 30 juniors to participate on the 15th. They're having a fundraiser basketball tournament on the 17th for Plymouth families. I think this was dedicated, don't quote me, I think this was intended to help the two families who were recently affected by medical events that we're aware of. The junior class trip was approved for the March of 2027. This is really the junior class of this year planning for their senior class trip next year. And they had the same lunch debt discussion, different values, but the same idea. And Phil, one of the members of the board, was authorized to represent the Plymouth Regional High School Board at the New Hampshire School Boards Association Delegate Assembly and vote on resolutions. And that's about it for the notable things.
Great. Any questions for Ted? I'll let you roll right into Conservation Commission if you like.
They have not met since we last met. They meet next week on the 21st at 7 p.m. right here.
Perfect. Capital Improvement Committee has a meeting scheduled.
November 6th.
November 6th. Any news from LRPC?
I haven't. I reached out to Bill, and I didn't get any report back.
No worries. Parks and Rec?
Not till November, I believe.
November as well. Energy Commission?
Yes, the Energy Commission did meet. Several of us had, there was discussion of the attendance that several of us attended the Local Energy Solutions Conference in Concord, which is hosted by New Hampshire. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. Forget about it. All right, I'm not going to come back. I'll come back to that. Local solution. So Local Energy Solutions is put on by a nonprofit, and it's basically a culmination of people that work in the industry, town energy commissions, planners. But it was a great talk. There was a morning session on reviewing the event we went to. There was a morning session on the current state of solar, recognizing the fact that a lot of the federal incentives are going away. There was and then there were morning breakout sessions, afternoon breakout sessions. We all kind of discussed our takeaways from it. There was, I think Maggie and I both attended the same topics. One of which was that fairly local gentleman, Paul Bemis, is the head of New Hampshire ASHRAE, which is they're basically ventilation engineers, American Society of Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Forget the acronym, but he's a very into building technology, building code. He presented a study that he did of the 2024 building code versus the 2018 building code as adopted by the state, and the cost impacts of building a building versus the operational savings of operating a building, and found that the 2024 code, based on his study, the 2024 code does show that building costs go up a little bit with the new code, but that the additional costs are recovered within the first 2 years of operation due to reduced energy costs in those buildings. So his goal is to present that to the state building code review committee, who advises the legislature on adoption of codes. That was a great one. The other thing the Energy Commission talked about was an audit of the town hall. So this building was identified as the best candidate for potentially improving with energy efficiency measures of all the town facilities, primarily because it has opportunity and is likely to be in our possession for a significant portion of time in the future. There was a walkthrough, kind of a free walkthrough with a representative from New Hampshire Electric Cooperative and a consultant, where they identified some potential improvements, but it really wasn't an audit per se. We decided to do further investigation into what funds are available for municipalities to actually cover an audit, and what funds might be available for improvements identified as the outcome of that audit. So the result of the discussion was that the Energy Commission has requested to budget $100,000 for renovations pending the outcome of the audit, in the anticipation that roughly 50% of that would be available in the form of rebates. So that was the move forward, but there's still research going on into getting a plan and how that would move forward. There was discussion of a potential warrant article to consider adopting CPACER, which is commercial property assessed, basically kind of a way of making investments in commercial properties and ensuring a longer payback period by assessing those fees assessing those costs as an assessment, kind of as like a tax lien. It's legislation that was that was authorized this past year by the legislature, but has to be adopted by towns in order to put into place. My personal opinion is it's a little early, and it would be an undue burden on the town right now without a lot of benefit. So I'm not a huge advocate of that one, honestly. And then there was a brief update. Maggie's going to try to get Paul Bemis, the engineer from ASHRAE, to address the safety building committee up on the benefits of efficiency and his study on code costs. That was it for the Energy Commission.
Any questions for Phil? Phil, do you want to go back and do planning board?
Yes, I'm happy to cover planning board. So the last planning board meeting was all consultant. We had a discussion about the housing master plan chapter with Judy Barrett. Judy came and discussed the outcome of, she addressed the survey that we had done, the 6-word outreach regarding the benefits of home, or what the meanings of home to you. We did discuss the chapter, and I keep losing that, sorry. There was basically just a lot of discussion about housing. Nothing actionable came out of the discussion other than a broad consensus of opinions that were provided to Judy as she moves forward. But I think there's a broad consensus that housing affordability is an issue, and taxes, the cost of taxes, are a big issue for everyone. You know, there was discussion about, you know, suitability of areas of town to focus on future development. There were some concerns expressed about other areas of town where some members would prefer not to see development happening. And then there was a little bit of public input from members of the public about the topics discussed. So a productive working meeting, getting towards getting towards that outcome of that grant that we're working on housing.
Any questions for Phil? All right, ABC, same deal as CIP. We're going to try to
November 6th.
meet all kind of together, because I think there's 100% overlap in the makeup of those two committees.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so one meeting, we can cover both topics. Chamber of Commerce.
Let's see, full transparency, I did not attend this meeting. These are the meeting minutes and some information I've received. So I'll start with kind of the biggest thing is Maddie is retiring. Fully, she's resigning and she's going to be fully retiring. I think she's here to the end of December, 12/19 actually. So she'll be working on a succession plan and helping with the search. She did make a couple suggestions on maybe how the board may want to handle it. She talked about merging with the Western White Mountain Chamber of Commerce, or reducing the ED hours and responsibilities, and hiring a paid fundraiser for the pass. So I'm not sure. Okay, discussions for the board for chamber board, but how that looks.
What is the Western White Mountain? What do they cover?
Actually, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the board has had many discussions or leaning towards or anything like that. Maddie was certainly a force. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure where that lies or that will lie. So let's see. They talked about there's a local chamber of commerce day. That like the New Hampshire Association of Chamber Commerces, or kind of do social media blasts and things like that. Ribbon cutting for Granite State Physical Therapy. They're on Tenny Mountain. Talked about outstanding renewals for 26 coming up, and they still have looks like 26. Yeah, 26 outstanding renewals. Scarecrow contest, that's coming up. And then, talking about membership renewals and the travel and tourism that's coming up. And it's January, if I remember correctly. And but I know a lot of their efforts obviously are going to be focused on the search for a new ED, whatever that looks like. That's what I got.
Any questions for Marianne? Any updates from Bill on Perlac?
On the building?
No, on Perlac. Anything from Bill?
No, nothing. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Police and Fire Building Assessment Committee. We did meet, and what's our next step?
We're waiting for the Phase 1 environmental study on the property to come back. We have our next meeting on November 12th, which Paul Bemis will be attending that meeting to talk about some of the HVAC energy pieces as Phil mentioned.
Efficiency opportunities.
Yes, thank you.
November 12th.
And we're meeting again on November 12th.
Yep.
In hopes that that study will be back to us.
And then we're hoping to start putting together a warrant article here pretty soon.
Correct.
Anything on union negotiations that could be discussed in public?
We'll talk about that in non-public.
Sounds great.
We met.
You met.
Yeah.
That can be discussed in
Very
public.
And we'll be meeting again.
Met and meeting again.
I was looking for the date.
Okay. Economic development.
So we had our first official meeting last Monday. So we already know who the committee members are. Molly will be the VP, and I'm co-chair, sorry. And we did have a member of the public. He's a developer. I think he owns, what's his name? Colin. I remember. Yeah, Colin. He's a developer. I think he owns land up on Boulder Point or near Boulder Point. So it'll be interesting if he continues and provides input.
Yeah, that's great.
Exciting to have a member of the public. We talked. I think it was a good meeting. Kind of trying to bring everybody up to speed on the efforts that are going on. Joseph provided a lot of good information. especially the railroad project, what's going on there, where he is, how that all relates, leads into conversations around the village commercial, Tenny Mountain, you know, what do we all want to see? It was really just an initial
Getting
conversation.
scoping meeting.
Kind of. It's a huge scope. I can't tell you all that because you already know that. We did decide for next. We really need to go through master plan, especially the economic development piece, but also the recommendation of everyone reading the entire master plan to understand. You know, so much goes into economic development all around everything that's in the master plan. So we're going to break that down a little bit, go into more detail with the economic development, and should we break things out? You know, Tenny Mountain Highway, should we break that piece out, that economic development piece out, versus downtown development piece? So we're still in the throes, and will be for a while, of discussions.
That sounds great. And you meet again?
I think we decided every first Monday
of the month.
Fourth Monday was. I need to set that meeting up
Okay.
with Joseph, but yeah.
Great. Any questions for Marianne or Jason? Great. The one last comment, and we kind of touched on it very briefly, but the DOT meeting is this coming Monday, or a week from today, in Pease Library.
6 days from today. It's Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday. It's a great point. 6 days from today, on Monday at 6 p.m. At Pease Library, and that is to discuss the 10-year plan for transportation projects and that prioritized list. As many of you who may be watching this and have stayed this long may know, we got bumped from that plan, one of our projects, and so
Two of our projects.
Two of our projects, in fact. And so it's an opportunity for this community to share your opinions on us getting pushed out of those projects. It's convenient that we're having a hearing here in town. So hopefully the community shows up for that. Tell your friends, it's going to be a good time.
I'm assuming that's not a norm for them to have such a conversation with the community affected.
Well, they're doing hearings all over the state.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
they
didn't
do.
realize
There's
that.
6 meetings that are taking
Gotcha.
place.
Yeah.
Well,
So it is
good to
normal
know.
for them to do that.
Okay.
We just happen to be hosting one of them
Right.
in a year where they
Right.
screwed us.
Upset us.
Yeah.
Right, screwed.
I'll use
Yeah.
harsher language
I'll
on
say
it.
upset.
I feel that way about it. Yeah. With that, any public comments?
Yes. Did you say that the chamber or the economic committee is going to meet on the last Monday of each?
The fourth Monday, was that? I don't have it on
Monday
my.
at 4, I think.
I thought it was fourth. I'll get back to you, Frank. I
thank
can't
you.
find my note about it.
All right.
Which is scary. Non-select first Monday. Sorry, 4 o'clock.
I have the first Mondays.
Yes, first Monday, 4 o'clock, which is a non-select board Monday.
Yes.
This is why we chose non-select board. So first Monday.
First Monday.
Yep.
Great. Anything else?
Nope.
All right.
I'll make a motion to go into non-public in accordance to RSA 91-A:3, number 2, A, personnel.
Second.
Jason.
Aye.
Aye.
Zach. Aye. Marianne.
Aye.
Ted.
Aye.